Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined this Tuesday morning by Andrew Erickson and Alfredo Brown. Fellas, normally we will jump right into the Tuesday show. We're not going to always address Monday Night Football on this Tuesday morning trade show. However, we have to talk about the injuries we saw last night. Obviously, first and foremost, everybody watching just sends their thoughts and prayers. They feel for Nick Chubb, just an absolutely gutting injury. You never like to see anybody get hurt. You especially never like to see anybody suffer a season-ending injury. And you especially never like to see anybody suffer what could be a career-altering injury, just really devastating and hard to watch. So wishing all the best and hoping for the best possible news there. Kevin Stefanski has already come out and said, he's not going to be back this season. So we can operate under that assumption. Alfredo, I want to start with you just quickly here. Waivers, is Jerome Ford the guy? Are we expecting a veteran addition to be brought in? How are you kind of approaching this in terms of the waiver wire today?
So I do think that they're going to have to bring in a veteran. It can't just be Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong here, but I'm willing to put a decent amount of my fab on Jerome Ford. We were talking about this before the show. Like, what running backs are left? Like, you kind of have to. What's today? Let's mark this down. September 19th is just going to have to be Jerome Ford Day now for this year. And this is going to be probably one of those moments where it's either going to make or break a fantasy manager. Jerome Ford is either going to be that awesome pickup that you got that totally changed your lineup, or you blew all your fab on him and he ends up being a massive bust. I lean a bit more towards Jerome Ford being productive. There's not that many running backs getting the volume. So, man, it's just, I come back to just the sadness of seeing Nick Chubb on the ground like that and getting carted off. It was a rough scene.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is our jobs to look ahead, but I'm with you where it's almost hard to. You just want to only think about him and like I said, hope for the best. Erickson, how are you approaching this backfield?
Yeah, I think that Jerome Ford is kind of the obvious name to go to. They've shown a lot of confidence in him, even though he hasn't really done a lot, especially during the preseason. He was hurt, but they didn't add any veterans during the offseason. Again, they traded for Pierre Strong from New England as another guy that they could potentially use in this backfield. But I think it's still going to be Jerome Ford probably as the 1A, regardless of whoever else they were to bring in. It's interesting to see maybe if they make a trade. I know that Cam Akers is rumored to be out there on the trade market. They're trying to move him. Again, I wouldn't necessarily think that he's a big factor if it was him versus Jerome Ford. Kareem Hunt is the other veteran that comes to mind. We don't really know what is going on behind the scenes with him in the Cleveland organization, if he's in the good graces or not. If he comes back there, then okay, that you could see another situation where it is a 1A, 1B situation. I don't think it's going to be Jerome. They never had Jerome Ford or Nick Chubb in this like 80% bell cow role. So I think he's going to see some type of split workload, but it's going to be him 50, 60% of the snaps. He can catch passes. I am concerned about just the Browns offense overall. Yep. And Nick Chubb was the engine to that offense. Like you cannot replace Nick Chubb. Like, I'm sorry. Like we know running backs don't matter, but Nick Chubb does. Like he is one of the few running backs, probably him and Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey, that actually move the needle and actually impact the offense. Jack Conklin is hurt for the Cleveland Browns. Their offensive line's not as good without him. And Nick Chubb made up for that because of how good he is. Jerome Ford, second-year player, he's fine. And I know he had a big run on Monday Night Football, but he's not Nick Chubb. So don't expect him to be anything near Nick Chubb, even if he's getting a decent amount of volume. So I would say RB2, but at this point, as Alfredo has already mentioned, like there's just not a lot of options to put in your RB2 slot. So you got to be aggressive if you don't have any running backs you can start this week, especially just based on all the injuries.
Yeah, man. Also just like one of the most fun rushers to watch in football. I think everybody would agree with that. He's just so talented and so fun.
Gets out of bed, averaging 5 yards carry.
Yeah, it's incredible. Not the only running back injury on Monday night. There was 2 games, of course. The other one not nearly as devastating, although of course we still feel for Jamaal Williams, hamstring injury. It's less clear right now what that timeline is, how the actual severity of that injury is. But Alfredo, same question. Is Tony Jones a guy you're spending any fab on? I mean, Taysom Hill got some carries and was somewhat efficient with that. What are you doing in New Orleans?
Yeah, of course Taysom Hill got some carries, right? Like it wouldn't be the Saints unless Taysom Hill is coming and just ruining fantasy seasons. This one's a little different. Like I have a very hard time investing anything in Tony Jones because at some point we should see Kendre Miller coming back. I'm not sure where he is on his injury status, but this didn't seem like he was going to be out for multiple weeks. And then you've got Alvin Kamara's return right around the corner. It's one more game, and then we've got Alvin Kamara back. So I'm not putting too much into the backfield of the New Orleans Saints right now. If anything, I think they just might lean on a more pass-heavy approach in this next game and then do some weird Taysom Hill stuff. But I don't think there's anything that's really all that actionable there for a fantasy manager going into week 3.
Yeah, Erickson, are you spending any fab on Jones or anybody else here?
Don't want Jones because Alvin Kamara is coming back in one more week. If anything, I want to scoop up Kendre Miller because maybe he gets a spot start here in week 3. You know, he was close to coming back in this game. He's also dealing with a hamstring injury. So if he's one of the healthy running backs, he's a rookie. Hey, like, let's give him some run. We know that we have Kamara coming back anyway in week 4. Let's give him some run. And for some reason, all these guys are out. Like, you could see a scenario where if you're hurting at tight end or wherever Taysom Hill is eligible, it's like maybe they just load up Taysom Hill with carries, knowing that they're going to get a lot of the running backs in week 4 and week 5. So week 3, it's just the Taysom Hill show, and you have a running back, you have a tight end that is getting carries at the goal line. So there are worse options at tight end than Taysom Hill in week 3.
I hate hearing those words. Let's go to our week 3 buy low, sell high running backs edition. We're going to start off with some of the most traded running backs right now. This is from our data that we have at FantasyPros. So we're going to hit a couple of those guys. Then we'll get into the buy lows and the sell highs. The most traded running back currently is actually Raheem Mostert. So really, I mean, a very exciting week 2. Obviously, he's been the bell cow in this offense in the first couple weeks of the season. We know how he tends to hold up or not hold up over the course of the season. So Alfredo, I'll start with you here. And spoiler alert, he was your pick for a later segment earlier initially. So I know which way you're going, but are you buying, selling, or holding on Raheem Mostert?
Yeah, I'm selling, and I'm selling hard. You almost laid out like every single reason as to why to sell him. We rarely see Raheem Mostert play more than 10 or 11 games in a season. He has started out really, really hot. 3 touchdowns in 2 games. He's the running back 5. Unless you really, really believe that Raheem Mostert is going to continue to be the running back 5 and collect a touchdown every game, which I don't, then yeah, you should be selling him. You should be taking advantage of this because you're going to have desperate fantasy managers out there that just want running back production, and they might be thinking here in just a very short window. The issue with Raheem Mostert is that Jeff Wilson comes back off IR. We know that he's going to take some of these carries. Devon Achane finally started to get some looks, and he was getting used in the passing game. So it may not really crush the fantasy value for Raheem Mostert, but it's definitely going to take a little bit off the top. I think it is going to cap his production ceiling. So Raheem Mostert for me, big sell.
Yeah, to highlight the discrepancy there, he's currently rated as RB31 in our rest of season rankings, and that's only from guys who have updated it since yesterday. So he, obviously a bit of a discrepancy there, RB5 versus RB31. Erickson, quickly, are you buying, selling, or holding on Mostert?
I'm going to sell a 31-year-old running back with an injury track record that's extensive as Raheem Mostert's is. So easy sell for me.
I've got a couple of trade options here I want to ask you guys. Alfredo, starting with you. Would you trade Raheem Mostert for Jonathan Taylor, who still there's the question mark of when he actually returns?
Yeah, because I think at this point when we were drafting Jonathan Taylor, we were drafting him with less information than we have now, that he wasn't going to be physically able to perform or whatever it may be. And people were still drafting him in like the 8th round, somewhere around there. That's about where you were drafting Raheem Mostert, if I remember correctly. So yeah. I'm happy trading Raheem Mostert for Jonathan Taylor, who seems, I don't want to speculate, but it does seem like he could just be coming right back into his running back role for the Colts.
How about Raheem Mostert or Javonte Williams, Alfredo?
That one's a little bit muddier. I want to believe in hope, so I'm going to believe in Javonte Williams and hope he gets better. But I really don't feel good about any of those words that I'm saying right now because we've seen that he's in a timeshare. I don't think that's going to go away. I think you're just hoping that he gets healthier as the season goes on.
I love when the analyst doesn't have an immediate answer to the question because it helps me know I picked the right 2 players, that it's actually kind of a tricky one. Last one here for you, Alfredo. Raheem Mostert, would you trade him for Dameon Pierce?
Yeah, actually. And I know there's a lot of dislike for Dameon Pierce right now. And I know he's been underwhelming to start the season, but I think the Houston Texans just kind of finding their footing. We're not seeing that really anyone else in that backfield is truly taking over. Mike Boone was involved in week 1, and then he was a scratch in week 2, and Devin Singletary really hasn't done a whole lot. They're having offensive line problems, but once that offensive line gets healthy, as CJ Stroud continues to look great and that offense continues to move the ball, I think we'll see some, regression to the mean and some touchdowns going Dameon Pierce's way and a little bit better production. So yeah, I would make that trade.
Erickson, just quickly, would you have traded Mostert for any of those guys? Or I guess I should ask, would you not have traded Mostert for any of those three? Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams, Dameon Pierce?
No, I would make all those trades. I think that, Mostert's short-term outlook probably looks a little bit better than all of those players, but you're playing the long game with Javonte, with Dameon Pierce, with Jonathan Taylor. And that's the definition of a buy low, sell high. Right now in the moment, yeah, that's why Raheem Mostert looks like he has more value. But when we're talking about this in a month from now, it's going to be like, oh, well, you should have bet on the younger players having better seasons as the season progresses. So Mostert obviously has a lot of value now because he is healthy and is the starting running back on a good offense. But how long will that last? I'm not so sure it will last long. So I'm ready to sell.
Next running back that we're going to talk about here, second most traded guy, Kyren Williams. Shockingly amazing start to start this season. Been an early league winner, but do we want to hold on to him as a long-term league winner? Erickson, I'll start with you this time. Are you buying, selling, or holding on Kyren Williams?
I would probably sell Kyren Williams. I think that you can get him at maximum value for what you got him for, which is basically nothing. So whether you had him on your bench as a last round pick or you picked him up off waivers after week 1, I think that this is just a perfect time to cash out. Why? You're not going to go broke making a profit. That's the way I see it with Kyren Williams. We've seen Sean McVay do weird things with his backfield constantly, just over churning whoever he likes. And when I look at Kyren Williams, yes, he has the role, that role that's really valuable in this Rams offense. But I think this Rams offense is playing well above expectation in terms of their offensive line still, I don't think is great. Kyren Williams is an undersized running back who's dealt with injuries through his first 2 years in the NFL. So now all of a sudden he's going to be playing a bell cow role, seeing 20 touches every single week, and is going to stay healthy the entire season. I just find that a little hard to believe and hard to buy into. So that's kind of why I'm looking at Kyren Williams as sick. I have this guy that everyone loves that has a sick role on his offense, but it's relatively unproven. I'm going to cash out for a more steady asset of a player that I know can be there throughout the entire season for the most part because of past proven production. So that's the way I'm approaching Kyren Williams.
Quickly, Erickson, if Akers gets traded, would you feel better about holding him? Holding Williams.
I mean, Akers is gone and already gone in my estimate. He was gone after he.
We thought that last year at a certain point, and it didn't play out that way by the end of the season.
I mean, you're right, but I just I get it. I can't have it happen again. It can't. Even though Akers will be an RB1 when it's all said and done, somehow, some way, I don't believe that's going to happen this year. I don't think we're going to see lightning strike twice for Cam Akers.
Alfredo, quickly, Kyren Williams, buy, sell, or hold?
I'm selling him. I'm old enough to remember when Darrell Henderson was the new hotness for the Rams backfield as well, and that changed so fast. Kyron's just not a great runner. He got a lot of catches out of the backfield. It's almost copy paste Raheem Mostert, 3 touchdowns in 2 games. I don't see it holding up.
Let's go to a couple trade options here. Erickson, would you trade Kyren Williams for Brian Robinson?
Yes, I would.
How about for Breece Hall?
100%.
And then Rachaad White?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Rachaad White. I feel more confident about Rachaad White's role, and I know that he looked good against the Bears, which isn't hard to do, and I am concerned about how he's going to look against the Eagles. But it was a good week for Rachaad White stands, so I'm just going to take the W and just pray that the Eagles game goes better in his favor.
Yeah, Alfredo, were these maybe a little too easy? Are you trading him for all 3 of those guys too? Again, Brian Robinson, Breece Hall, Rachaad White?
I'm definitely trading for Brian Robinson and Breece Hall. Rachaad White is where I stop and think about it a little bit because I think that these 2 players are so similar. Neither of them are overly productive runners, and they're both kind of used out of the backfield a bit. I guess I actually think I might keep Kyren Williams over Rachaad White just because the offense may be scoring more points and more touchdown opportunity.
I got one, so at least they weren't all too easy. I appreciate it. Let's go to the buy low, sell high section. We'll start with buy low. Alfredo, give me your top buy low running back right now.
So my top buy low running back right now, and it's kind of boring, but that's the point, is you almost want to find these guys that are flying under the radar, and it's Joe Mixon. He's been a top 10 running back in PPR points per game in 4 of the last 5 seasons. He was running back 13 in 2019. So like, we've seen him just be consistent, be productive every single year. And it kind of goes along with what Erickson was saying, is sometimes you want to sell these flash in the pan guys for the more consistent guy that you know is going to get the volume. And right now what we've seen is that Joe Mixon is getting volume. He's averaging 18 opportunities per game and what should be a good offense, but just isn't a good offense at the moment. There's a lot to figure out here with Joe Burrow and his calf. Like, is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be out there on the field? If he misses any time, I'd imagine that the Bengals would lean a bit more on Joe Mixon than the backup quarterback for that offense. And you're probably going to see a lot more dump off passes to him. But I think we've just seen a bad luck for these first 2 weeks. He's getting opportunity. We know he's maybe not a huge game breaker, but he's good enough to be a high-end RB2 on your fantasy team. I think the touchdown stuff starts to turn around as the Bengals offense starts to turn around. They only have 2 touchdowns in the season. So Joe Mixon for me is one of those guys that I think fantasy managers get it in their head. They are probably so frustrated with him year over year over year because Joe Mixon is always one of those frustrating guys, but he's just good enough to be an RB2. And I think he's a pretty good buy low.
The backup for the Bengals, I believe, has never completed an NFL pass. So very much an unknown if Burrow is not there. So from what you said, it sounds like, would you lean more towards you'd rather have Mixon in that scenario where he's going to get more volume at the very least, or Burrow being healthy? Obviously, it's a better offense overall, better scoring opportunities, probably more efficient.
I mean, I definitely want Burrow there because we're seeing that he's still getting volume with Burrow under center. I'm just saying that even if Burrow's not there, I think the way he's getting this volume might change. I think he might get targeted a bit more out of the backfield. I think that he might be getting a bit more run instead of them. Who's the backup quarterback? Jake Browning, I believe.
Jake Browning, yep.
Yeah, like I don't think
I had to look it up.
Husky, baby.
I don't think they're dropping him back, 30 plus times a game. I think they're going to ask Joe Mixon to try to carry this offense. So it's kind of a no matter what. Like, I'm good with Joe Mixon here.
Erickson, give me your buy low running back.
Is my favorite running back, Travis Etienne, coming off a bad game against the Kansas City Chiefs, just 12 carries for 40 yards. It's weird, they didn't give the ball to Travis Etienne enough, and the offense just wasn't good. It's really weird. All these Christian Kirk targets really didn't move the needle for the Jaguars offense to put up points. I wonder what they're going to do against the Houston Texans. What do you guys think? I think they're going to load up Travis Etienne with targets and touches, and he's going to go freaking nuclear. And the other thing? Tank Bigsby. How many touches did he play? Or how many touches did he get in week 2? 0. 19% snap share. The guy is not a factor whatsoever because every time he touches the ball, it's a turnover for the Jaguars offense. So Travis Etienne had bell cow usage week 1, dip in production in week 2. This window is it's open. There's a small creek in that window where you can buy Travis Etienne because someone might be, I guess week 1 was a mirage. He's not the bell cow we were all hoping he would be. This is the opportunity to pounce and be aggressive to get a running back that I think can be a league winner because I think they're going to go back to him having a larger role in the offense. They went away from him in week 2. I think that was a mistake. He was also dealing with some cramps. So Travis Etienne for me, major buy. Houston Texans week 3, giddy up.
Erickson, where do you have him ranked rest of the season at running back?
I haven't updated my top guys yet, but he'll probably be somewhere in the top 5.
Wow. Would you have him in the top 5 as well, Alfredo, or is that too aggressive for you?
Little too aggressive for me, but I'm also a very well-known wet blanket. For me, Travis, what Erickson's saying is very true. Like, we are not seeing all the scary stuff that everyone had predicted with Tank Bigsby. Once again, we're 2 weeks into the season. So much is going to change, but Travis Etienne should be a locked and loaded RB1 every week.
Well, let's all be wet blankets and get to some sell high running backs and tell people to, get out while they can on a couple of guys. Alfredo, start with you again. Who's your top sell high running back right now?
I think a lot of people love him, and I'll probably get some crap in the comments for this, but James Conner. James Conner is one of the few guys that's getting volume, and that's why I said, this is weird to be like, yeah, I'm selling this running back, because there's maybe 8 guys that are actually getting touches, and he's one of them. He's been getting the volume. They had a pretty good start to the season here where they have not had to face tough defenses. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to see that James Conner value take quite a dip going up against the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. And I don't know. I got a sneaking suspicion here that Joshua Dobbs is going to turn into a pumpkin over the next 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, man, that Cardinals offense, I think, has been surprising everyone. And I think once they go up against some much better defenses, that's going to change. Kyler Murray could return as early as week 5. Seems like maybe week 6 or 7 is even realistic. We're seeing that the Cardinals have been better than we thought. They might want to be a bit more competitive. It doesn't seem like Jonathan Gannon is the patsy that we all thought he might be, or they're just going to fire him after one season and let them, just keep losing games. The thing with me is, I think we've all talked about this at one point or another. It's that split that was in favor of James Conner when Kyler Murray is out. He's been so much better. And then when Kyler Murray's back, over his career, James Conner takes a 33% dip in fantasy production. So if there was ever a guy where I'm like, okay, yeah, sell high right now. He had 2 good games. He's got 2 tough opponents. And then eventually the quarterback that comes in and just absolutely destroys his fantasy production is coming back in maybe 3 to 4 weeks. I'm cool just selling James Conner for as much as I can get.
Yeah, the whole Jonathan Gannon thing. I mean, I think back to like Nick Sirianni, like had some press conference moments where I was like, ooh, this guy's like not the best, talking to the mic. He's kind of awkward. And a lot of people were kind of out on him because of that. And then obviously now he's one of the better coaches in the NFL. I don't expect that out of Gannon, but I do think we can maybe look past some of the, do you have that fire in your gut stuff and at least give him a chance. They've certainly been frisky, but like you said, they haven't had to go up against the likes of Dallas and San Francisco quite yet. Erickson, give me your top sell high running back here.
DeAndre Swift. And it's because he had the perfect run out that you could ever ask for a running back playing on a primetime game. He had 28 carries for 175 yards. 75% snap share was the second highest of his career. Like, DeAndre Swift has never seen this workload at any point at any game in his entire NFL career. And there will be managers that have Swift that think this is the long term. Like, people think this is going to be his role every single week. It's not. Like, it's literally impossible for him to do that because he's shown the inability to have this type of workload game over game. It's part of the reason why Detroit got rid of him, because he couldn't stay healthy and he wasn't consistent when they would give him more of a workload. It was a short week, Thursday night. He didn't play at all in week 1 on that Sunday game. He was fresh. Kenneth Gainwell didn't play at all in this matchup on Thursday night against the Vikings, who were just inviting the Eagles to run the football. They were just playing back. It's like, run the ball. The Eagles are like, okay, sure. We'll just run the football. So I think that Swift right now is just at his peak value. Like, he will never be worth more than he is right now. And that's why I think you can just get a king's ransom for him, because there are managers that think that he's going to be the Eagles RB1 locked and loaded for the rest of the season, when we have quotes from Nick Sirianni that specifically said that Swift's role is going to change week to week, depending on what the game plan is, but depending on what the opponent is. So I think it was actually forward thinking of Sirianni to actually put Swift in bubble wrap week 1, knowing that they'd have a quick turnaround on Thursday night. Obviously, I don't think he envisioned Kenneth Gainwell getting hurt, but being like, hey, we're playing on a short week. Let's save one of our running backs, not use him at all, and then unload him on a Thursday night on a short week against a defense that's been beat up and playing already a full game. And it worked. Like, so I would give credit to Sirianni for that. And for the same reasons, like, this role is not going to be the same for DeAndre Swift. Kenneth Gainwell is going to eventually be healthy again, and I think he's going to have a role in the offense. So for me, it's Swift. Not to say he can't be the 1A for the rest of the season, but he's never going to have this role ever again, in my opinion.
Yeah, Alfredo, I want to get your opinion on Swift as well. Week 1, he finished RB 77. Week 2, he finished RB 2. So that just kind of highlights the vast difference there. Where would he be ranked for you rest of the season?
Man, it's so hard because I think that you want to be able to put him as a top 24 running back based on what you saw. But I mean, what Erickson said is so true. It's kind of like how we get that Hard Knocks bump in the preseason. You get the primetime bump of guys that play on Thursday night or Monday Night Football because so many more of your league mates are watching. So I think DeAndre Swift ends up becoming the perfect sell high candidate, just like he's talking about here. I struggle to confidently have him as a top 24 running back the rest of season. Okay, let me take that back. I struggle to have him as a let's say top 15 running back. I think he could be top 24 just, based on some explosive plays in the Eagles offense. But like we talked about, he hasn't really finished a full season before. And this Eagles backfield, it's going to be a split in all different ways. So it's a struggle for me.
He does still tend to finish, as an RB2 most seasons, even through all the ups and downs, obviously in a different situation in previous years. Let's get to some listener questions from Twitter. We'll go quickly through these. Just got a few of them for you guys. First up here from @MGilly. Is it time to give up on Justin Fields? Erickson, what do you think?
I mean, I don't think so. It depends on, he's still scoring 16 fantasy points back-to-back weeks. He didn't run at all abnormally in week 2, which has never happened. He had less rushing attempts than he's had since his rookie year in a game that he didn't even finish. So I think that that's a major outlier. He's going to run until they just bench him outright. He's going to be productive for fantasy football. So I don't think that he's been so atrocious where he's killed your lineups. He hasn't had these big spike weeks, but he's still a mobile quarterback, and I'm still going to play him over most waiver wire. I mean, if it's him versus Richardson, okay, I get that. But what waiver wire quarterback are you just I have to play this guy over Fields? I don't see a scenario where that's the case.
What do you think, Alfredo? Time to give up on Fields?
Maybe if you're the Chicago Bears. But for fantasy, it's exactly what Erickson's saying. I mean, I don't think that you will regret keeping Justin Fields in your lineups. He's always going to have that rushing floor, that insulation for fantasy points. Whereas if you let him go, you trade him away, whatever it might be, and he pops off the rest of the season, yeah, you're going to regret that. So I don't think it's time yet to give up on Justin Fields in fantasy. In the NFL, maybe.
Yeah. From 314 Tuck, trade Ramondre Stevenson for Josh Jacobs straight up. Alfredo, would you do that? Ramondre Stevenson for Josh Jacobs?
No. I had a lot of concerns about Josh Jacobs going into this season. He got insane volume last year, and we've seen that players who do not spend a whole lot of time in training camp usually have a dip in production. They are usually more likely to get injured. And once again, it's just 2 weeks, so I'm not going to overstate the Josh Jacobs production, but I think Ramondre's been fine. I think Zeke has been annoying, but I don't think that Zeke has totally killed Ramondre's value. He's still been, if I'm not mistaken, a top 15 running back in back-to-back weeks. So I think that Ramondre Stevenson is, at this point, and probably for the rest of the season, a bit more valuable than Josh Jacobs.
Erickson, you're a noted Ramondre lover, and you are a noted Josh Jacobs hater. Are you trading Ramondre for Josh Jacobs right now?
No, I'm not trading Ramondre for a running back that I rush for more yards than in week 2. So not going to happen for me.
I think that's a pretty fair philosophy. We will wrap things up there for Erickson and Alfredo. I am Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Those are the buy low, sell high running backs. And stick around because we've got wide receivers coming up next.